The way I describe a business without data, it's like driving a car in the dark, right? Your foot's on the pedal, you're driving forward, you're driving fast, but you can't see where you're going. Data is the headlights. Data allows you to see what's ahead of you. You know, if you want to take a different direction, you know, what obstacles are in your way.
Hello and welcome to 11FS Fintech Insider Spotlight. I'm Benjamin Ensor, Director of Research and Strategy here at 11FS. In this show, we shine a spotlight on the best and brightest in the tech and financial services industries to get to know them, their businesses, and what they think the future of the industry will look like. On today's Spotlight, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Jack Smith, founder and chief executive of Love Finance, a UK-based company that specializes in providing funding solutions to small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, thank you, Benjamin.
Thank you so much for joining us. So as we talked about on our Fintech Insider podcast many times last year, SMEs have increasing difficulty getting funding from established lenders whose appetite for supporting these businesses often appears to be declining. As a result, many SMEs are frustrated and turning to alternative finance providers and fintech solutions to try and bridge the gap and find that finance they need. Does that ring true with you? Is that what you're seeing in the industry?
Yeah, for sure. The banks and traditional lenders have always struggled with small businesses. I don't think that's because they don't care or they don't want to support small businesses.
They're not bad people.
No, I genuinely think they do want to care. I just don't think they're set up right. I don't think they have the right processes. You got to understand that the servicing cost of a small £20,000 business loan is probably not too dissimilar to the servicing costs of a £2 million loan. So, commercially, it makes sense to focus on the larger end of the market. But that's fine because it means, companies like Love and others can fill the gap. So you're right.
So you're sort of saying it's rational but unhelpful behavior.
Yes.
And of course, there's a cost to it in the longer term because the customer who gets turned down when they want to borrow 20,000 might then think differently about going to the same lender for a 200,000 or 2 million loan that they might want in a year or two if they're a successful and growing company, right?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
So what were some of the things that prompted you to start Love Finance? What was the sort of catalyst for your journey?
My father owned a leasing company where I started as a small boy. So I always had exposure to small businesses and seeing how they operate. I'm 33, but I've got 20 years experience. So
it's quite unusual.
It's all I know. It is all I know.
Okay, so you pretty much grew up with lending to small businesses, which is, I hesitate to say, not a normal childhood. I don't mean to insult you, but that's unusual. That's unusual. So you already knew as a sort of young person that you'd come across some of these kind of frustrations. But you've then started a company, which is a really uphill task, for anybody, let alone somebody relatively young. What were some of the biggest hurdles that you faced in the early days of founding the company?
Yeah, it's still an uphill task, and it seems to only get steeper. Ironically, the biggest hurdles was cash flow. I've taken no venture capital. I've had to bootstrap everything up until this point. I remember having to borrow, £3,000 off my girlfriend to pay for expenses. That makes you really resourceful. I'd sit there late at night watching YouTube videos on how to put performance marketing ads on, or how to configure systems, or how to reconcile balance sheets. All of the mundane stuff my customers have to do now.
I was going to say, they must give you a real empathy for your customers, the fact that you've gone through that same journey of trying to get a new business off the ground.
Absolutely. So I know how hard it is.
I bet that really, really helps with understanding their problems and their perspectives.
Yeah.
What do you see as some of the biggest challenges for your clients? What are the sort of things that you hear from SMEs most often? What are the most common challenges or frustrations that you hear from them?
There's a couple of common misconceptions with finance. The first one being that it is clunky and takes a lot of time. When people apply with us, I think the speed stuns. I think it shocks them how quickly we can get you finance.
How quickly can you get people finance?
We've had applications come in 9 o'clock in the morning and paid out before 4 o'clock.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah. It's not quick enough sometimes.
I was going to say, can you do it faster?
Like sometimes I look at that and I think, are we bragging there? But that's not quick. That's not quick enough. There's still definitely efficiencies that can be made.
Okay, so one frustration is the speed of the process.
Yeah.
What else? Presumably, one of the other big frustrations is just lots of SMEs just getting turned down. I mean, we know from the research we do, we're talking to small businesses, is you just get turned down again and again, often without reason, right?
Listen, there's always a reason, but like I alluded to earlier, there's lots of new challenger banks coming into the market. Even when they come in, I rarely see a new small business loan product from them. It always seems to be the big commercial mortgages or the big bridging loans. There doesn't seem to be an appetite for small business loans. And again, it's the operational cost, it's the servicing cost to get money out the door. It's why Love Finance's mission is to try and automate and bring down the cost of small business loans so we can deploy money at scale. That is the real challenge, but one that I think is worth fighting for.
Tell me a little bit about that automation. So I agree with you, you're right. One of the keys is that sort of processing cost.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us some of the things that you're doing? I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I want to go there. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Love Finance to try and automate that process. How do you make it faster? How do you make it more efficient?
Yeah. I mean, we're obsessed with efficiencies. We're obsessed with inefficiencies. We're constantly looking at trying to make tiny little marginal gains to close the gap. When we talk about a small business loan, I think our average business loan size is £25,000. It doesn't need to be captious. Open banking alone, 12 months of open banking statements gives you such incredible amount of information to understand what a business looks like. We're trying to remove the hoops rather than add them.
So getting access to open finance data is one of your big ways of sort of automating and speeding things up.
Yeah.
Are there other things that you're doing as well? I mean, without sharing all of your secrets with any competitors who happen to be watching this.
Yeah.
Are there other things that you're doing?
There's so much more to the process than just underwriting a deal. There's the capturing the customer information up front. There's APIs into other credit bureaus and other credit agencies. You've also got, fraud and due diligence checks. Like there's so many processes that, people under the iceberg, it's like you only see this bit of what we do, but actually all the clever stuff is underneath. So we're always looking to improve the process.
So it's actually about sort of continuously improving those dozens, if not hundreds of underlying processes, and of course all the regulations that you have to comply with and everything else, and of course all the things you have to do to make sure you get the money back.
Yeah.
Because I always think it's very easy to grow fast in lending and quite hard to necessarily make a profit.
Oh, you're absolutely right. So like there's two sides to lending. The front end, which is deploying the capital, lending money, getting money out the door. But there's also the second bit, which is the back end, the bit where you've got to get the money back. I see lots of innovations happening at the front end of that, in that lending space. But I'd really quite like to see if there could be more innovation done in the repayment side. And actually, rather than sending stroppy emails and reminder letters, maybe we can gamify it, or, some sort of points reward system with collections.
Yes, because one of the common things in consumer lending, and I think this applies to business lending as well, is it's not that people don't want to pay the money back, it's that they've got cash flow challenges of their own, sometimes unrelated to them, they're not their own fault. But, particularly for small businesses, if their customers are late paying them, that can give them cash flow problems. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think you're right. There's probably a lot of opportunity if you can get a better understanding of why are they late with the payment, or why are they at risk of being late with the payment.
Yeah, it benefits both sides, doesn't it?
Talk about the sort of the opportunities of growing the business. You've grown pretty fast at Love Finance, which is fantastic. Significant growth over the past few years. You've grown your revenue from about £1 million in 2021 up to 10 million in 2024, which is fantastic. Doubling your revenue each year. You've doubled your headcount. You're remaining profitable. What are some of the drivers behind that growth? How have you managed to achieve that growth?
Certainly the first one is the people at Love. There's there's got to be over 100 of us now. There's a real like sense of urgency. There's a real obsession with pushing forward, what I'm very proud of course. Second would be data and data mastery. I don't have a background in data, but what I've learned in the past few years scaling, the way I describe a business without data, it's like driving a car in the dark, right?
Well, that sounds scary. With, with lights?
Well, let me get to this point. So you're driving along in the car in the dark. Your foot's on the pedal. You're driving forward, you're driving fast, but you can't see where you're going. Data is the headlights. Data allows you to see what's ahead of you. You know, if you want to take a different direction, you know, what obstacles are in your way. I've learned just how important data is.
Sounds like, and from what you were saying earlier about sort of open finance and so on, it sounds like data is a big part of what enables you to be fast, but also see the difference between two companies that are coming to you, both asking for £25,000 or whatever, one of which is a really good credit risk and one of which maybe isn't. So presumably data is a sort of key part of your sort of whole decision making.
Absolutely. And just because it doesn't fit our credit profile at Love Finance doesn't mean that we can't find you, you know, a funder that does fit.
Okay, so you'll introduce customers
Absolutely.
to
Yeah, for sure. Because we don't care about where you get the funds from. We just want you to get the funds, whether it's from us or from other lenders. So
okay, so you'll introduce people.
Absolutely, yeah.
So presumably you get to a certain point where you've got too much exposure to a particular sector or whatever. For some reason you do fantastically well with building companies or construction. You suddenly say, actually, too much of our portfolio is in there. So we actually will nudge business in other ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And also deal size. Like, you know, we're masters at small business loans.
Yeah.
We're not particularly efficient with the larger stuff, whereas we'll go to partners that, you know, are comfortable doing £1 million deals.
And how has the market changed over the sort of the few years since you started the business? Because, you know, we've gone through COVID and now we've got Trump, and, you know, how's the business sort of changed over that time?
For sure, there's more options out there, which is fantastic. COVID had a big part to play in that. Like, I remember pre-COVID, just uttering the words unsecured working capital loan might as well have been a swear word. Like, God forbid your customer needed a cash flow loan, it must mean they're desperate. And that's just not true. I think what we're finding is there's a real decline in overdrafts, if anything. I think what the gap we're filling is what was left behind from the overdraft market.
Okay, so banks have sort of withdrawn overdrafts or shrunk overdrafts. And so you've got lots of small businesses just needing working capital.
Yeah.
So good businesses that for whatever reason have got short-term cash flow shortages.
We're a perfect example of that. Even 2 years ago, you know, I applied for an overdraft for Love Finance. We have, you know, £1 million+ coming in and out of the bank accounts every month. We're profitable. You know, my credit was good. I was a homeowner, and I asked for a £100,000 overdraft facility, and I didn't hear anything for 2 weeks. And then I got a letter for a £5,000 credit card. So it's pretty, you know, that was pretty useless.
A letter after 2 weeks.
After 2 weeks, yeah.
Very, very 20th century.
Yeah.
Could you tell us, share an example of the kind of companies you're doing business with? Maybe give us an example of a sort of success story, a company that you've helped to grow. I mean, maybe you can't name the company, but
without sounding too cheesy, I'd love to think that all of our customers are success stories. The way I see it is like, Love isn't the hero in their story. Like, they're the hero. If anything, we're just the sidekick that occasionally might make a cameo. I'll tell you what I do though. So sometimes I'll log on to our system and I'll try and I'll type in, you know, my hometown and see what customers I might help in my hometown and see if there's any I recognise from growing up.
That's quite nice.
That makes me happy, yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, where in the country did you grow up?
I grew up in a town called Solihull on the outskirts of Birmingham.
So West Midlands?
The Midlands, yeah.
For international audiences who might not be familiar with Solihull. What's Solihull's most famous product, apart from Love Finance?
Apart from Love Finance, you've got Jaguar Land Rover.
That was what I was thinking. I was thinking it was
Gymshark.
Yeah.
So there's some good Brummy ones out there.
What about trust? So trust is obviously very important to customers. I always think when people are borrowing, they may be a little bit less worried about it because they just want the money. But actually, when you're borrowing money from someone, it does matter who you're borrowing it from. It does matter how they're going to treat you. How do you think about trust and sort of building trust with your customers? How important is that to your business model?
Yeah, trust is crucial. And truth be told, a lot of finance companies, they only make money the second time the customer comes back. So it's almost a non-negotiable. The trick is being authentic about that. I'd like to think that our customers can tell that we've built the product and the journey around them, and that builds the trust.
This is like a very direct question. Is that true, right? Have you built
Absolutely.
the product around them? How have you done that?
I guess customers talk with their actions, don't they? I mean, we're constantly A/B testing. Like I told you, we're obsessed about data. So we're always trying to find out, again, like it doesn't matter how insignificant it might seem, if a button is placed there or here or there, we'll test it. We're obsessed with efficiency.
So you're really trying to sort of not only efficiency, but also improve the customer experience, trying to make the customer experience better. What kind of renewal rates do you start to get? I mean, I realize that can maybe be a bit commercially sensitive, but you're right. Getting an existing customer to renew with you is vastly more efficient than going out and finding a new customer. Can you see what kind of renewal rates you're getting?
Yeah, currently 1 in 3 customers will return to Love Finance. And even then, I think that could well be more. But obviously, we acquire so many new customers every month that it sort of skews those figures, but certainly 1 in 3. And
you have strong ratings on Trustpilot, right? Do you sort of encourage your customers to promote you on Trustpilot, or is that something that just sort of happens?
That's natural, and I love it. Like, I still get the notifications on my emails to see, like, you've got a 5-star review, and I'll read pretty much every single one of them. So
fantastic. Any 1-star reviews?
No.
Not lent to any of your competitors?
No.
So tell me a little bit about your customer experience. What sort of makes the Love Finance customer experience stand out? You talked about this great Trustpilot reviews. What makes the customer experience stand out?
Firstly, Love's customer experience is built around the customer. And I know that might seem obvious, but it's not. A lot of lenders will build it around their process, will build the customer journey around their process and expect customers to jump through hoops. Whereas Love, we're just looking to remove the hoops altogether. And the second is the general vibe. I remember Tony Robbins, it always stuck with me. Tony Robbins said, style is more important than substance initially. Obviously, substance is really important to retain customers, but style is as important. For instance, I remember when Monzo first came out. I had no idea what cool features Monzo had or how that could help me. I just wanted the cool orange card. Sometimes it can be that simple.
So just being sort of modern, fresh, stylish makes you a breath of fresh air compared with old established firms doing things in the same old way. What are some of the innovations that you think we might see coming through in sort of SME lending over the next 5 years? We've managed to talk for a while without mentioning AI, but you have mentioned data, and the connection between data and AI is sort of, I'm sort of leading you, which is unfair. But what are some of the innovations that you think we might see over the next few years? What are you hoping to change or drive?
Our mission really is to drive down the cost of small business loans, to make it more accessible.
Yeah.
Because we are finding out why it is more commercially viable to lend to the larger end of the market. And we can only do that with AI and automation. Like it's a necessity.
Because you can then just sort of serve the customer more efficiently.
Yeah. The challenge is being able to deploy billions of pounds to the wider SME economy safely, responsibly, but small.
Yeah. And I think, so that sort of comes back to your original point you were making about why some of the traditional established lenders just go for the top of the market because it's easier.
Yeah.
And they're just not set up to serve the smaller businesses. Is there anything you'd like to see from the regulators? Is there anything that the regulators could do to help you or help your customers?
I guess I would love to see the market less scared about regulation in general. Whenever you mention regulated business to institutional lenders, they always screw their face up. If you think small businesses are underserved, sole traders might as well be invisible.
Why are sole traders invisible? Because you have the same problems, just more so, because they're smaller, the economics are worse.
They're smaller, but they fall into that regulatory zone.
Mm.
So they're classed as consumers, and that puts a lot of lenders off. I don't think that's fair. That doesn't help anyone.
Mm. It discourages innovation, doesn't it? It discourages economic growth.
Yeah, but I don't know whether that's a regulatory issue or a market issue. I think it's both. I think us as lenders have to do more about that, and so do the regulators.
So what's next for Love Finance? What's your sort of vision for the future of the company?
I mean, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface on the UK market, but a beautiful customer journey can be appreciated in any language. So I'd love to see us in new markets, new economies, ideally somewhere hot.
Do you have immediate plans, or do you think that's something that's sort of 3, 4, 5 years off?
Yeah, I mean, I argue with myself in the shower all the time about it. So
okay, so we should expect to see Love Finance somewhere warm.
Yeah, watch this space. Yeah.
Soon. Okay, well, it's coming to the end of the show. Thank you so much to Jack for joining me. Where can people find out a little bit more about you and everything you're getting up to at Love Finance?
You can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on Instagram, or you can drop us an email and I'll be happy to reply.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, that's all we have time for this week. Please do make sure you follow not only Love Finance, but also 11FS on LinkedIn to stay updated with all the things we're doing. And if you do enjoy the show, please do subscribe to the 11FS YouTube channel, where you can catch up on previous episodes like this one. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye.